Tonight, you are going to do something no human body was designed for. You are going to lie completely flat, on your back or side, motionless for 8 hours straight, in a sealed room, on a surface that does not move, at a single, unchanging angle, in total darkness, completely alone in the dark. If you described this to your ancestors, they would not call it sleep. They would call it a strange kind of confinement. Because for nearly the entire history of our species, nobody slept this way. Not once in that entire span. Not for 200,000 years. And your body still remembers. Let's start with the most basic thing, the flat mattress. Soft, level, perfectly horizontal, head to feet. This feels normal because it is all you have ever known, but it is a remarkably recent invention. For most of human history, people slept elevated, raised platforms, woven mats above the ground, hammocks suspended in open air. Sleeping directly on flat ground was actually dangerous. Cold radiates upward from bare earth. It pulls heat straight out of a sleeping body. Ground-level insects and small predators move most freely near a sleeping human. So across nearly every early culture, people found ways to get off the ground. Raised sleeping platforms show up again and again in the record. Not because ancient humans wanted soft mattresses, because elevation solved several problems at once. It kept you warmer, it kept the crawling things below you, and it did something else, something almost nobody thinks about today. It kept your body at a slight incline. Your bed does not do that. Modern mattresses are engineered to be perfectly flat and level. That has become the definition of comfortable. But flat and level was never the ancestral baseline. Look at how differently other cultures approached this for centuries. In medieval Europe, beds were often built with a slight built-in incline. Some historians believe this was partly practical. People feared that lying flat looked too much like death. But it may also have simply felt better, and nobody questioned why. Traditional Japanese sleeping setups used a firm futon on a raised platform, not the plush cushioning that modern Western mattresses default to. Firm support, close to the ground but never directly on it. In parts of the Middle East and North Africa, elevated cushioned platforms were common for centuries, often angled slightly, often shared among family members. Across wildly different climates and cultures, one pattern kept repeating: elevation, firmness, some degree of incline, rarely a soft, dead-flat surface at ground level. The completely flat mattress you sleep on tonight is not some universal human default. It is a specific, modern, mostly Western invention. Standardized, mass-produced, and marketed as the only correct way to rest. Now here is where this gets genuinely interesting. Your spine was not designed to lie completely flat for 8 hours. It has natural curves. A cervical curve at your neck, a thoracic curve at your upper back, a lumbar curve at your lower back. These curves distribute load and absorb shock while you move through the world. When you lie flat, gravity pulls those curves toward a straighter line. Your lower back often loses its natural inward curve. This creates a small gap between your spine and the mattress. Over 8 hours, that gap adds pressure to your spinal discs. Discs that were never designed to compress that way for that long. This is why so many people wake up with lower back stiffness. Stiffness that seems to come from nowhere. It did not come from nowhere. It came from 8 hours on the flattest surface your body has ever slept on. Now let's talk about something even more fundamental: movement, or the complete lack of it. A modern night of sleep is essentially a night of near total stillness. You might shift a handful of times, but mostly you stay still. This is historically bizarre. Researchers who study non-industrialized societies have found something striking. Groups like the Hadza in Tanzania, the San in the Kalahari, their sleep is not one continuous 8-hour block. It is fragmented. People wake briefly, multiple times a night. They shift position, they adjust bedding. Sometimes they get up entirely, tend to fire, talk quietly, then lie back down. This is not poor quality sleep. Historian Roger Ekirch documented the same pattern in pre-industrial Europe. People slept in two distinct segments, with a period of quiet wakefulness in between, often lasting an hour or more. They called this first sleep and second sleep. It was so normal, historical records barely mention it, the way nobody today bothers mentioning that they eat breakfast. This segmented pattern was not a flaw in ancient sleep. It appears closer to the biological default. Modern sleep studies confirm this. When people spend extended time in darkness, away from artificial light, many settle into this same two-phase pattern naturally. Consistent, unbroken 8-hour sleep is not the ancient norm. It is a product of the modern schedule, the modern mattress, the modern demand to stay still and silent. So why does movement matter so much? Because your body was built to move even while resting. Blood pooling is a real risk when a body stays still too long. Small shifts in position redistribute blood flow. They relieve pressure on joints. They prevent numbness in compressed nerves. Ancestral sleep built in far more natural movement than a flat mattress does. Your body expects small adjustments. It expects brief, wakeful moments. It expects to shift its own weight periodically, the way it does automatically in an uncomfortable chair. A flat mattress works against nearly all of that. Now let's talk about the incline. This is where things get especially interesting. The evidence goes beyond archaeology into basic physiology. Humans evolved sleeping at a slight upward angle more often than you'd think. Hammocks, by design, elevate the head above the hips. Raised platforms with simple bedding rolls often propped the head higher too, even without anyone consciously engineering it that way. Some anthropologists point to our closest primate relatives here. Chimpanzees build sleeping nests in trees every single night. Those nests are rarely flat. They have a natural incline, often with extra material near the head. If incline was common in both places, it is worth asking why. Here is the physiological case, piece by piece. When you lie completely flat, gravity has no vertical pull on fluid in your upper body. Fluid that drains downward during the day now has nowhere obvious to go. This is part of why people wake up with facial puffiness or slight nasal congestion. A slight incline uses gravity to help fluid drain from the head overnight. This is also why doctors recommend elevating the head for congestion, for acid reflux, for certain breathing issues. It is not a new medical trick. It is closer to a return to a default position. Lying completely flat can also make the airway more prone to collapse. Gravity pulls the tongue and soft tissue backward when the neck is level. This can worsen snoring and mild sleep apnea in some people. A modest incline, just enough to lift the chest slightly, can help. None of this means every ancestral habit was optimized on purpose. Evolution does not plan ahead. It simply means certain conditions were present for hundreds of thousands of years. Your body adapted to expect them. When you remove those conditions all at once, your body does not simply adjust. It responds the way it always does when reality stops matching its expectations, with small, chronic friction. Stiffness that seems to come from nowhere. Congestion that seems unrelated to anything. A vague sense of being unrested, despite technically getting 8 hours. None of these are usually medical emergencies. They are mismatches, and they are profitable mismatches, which is worth pointing out. The mattress industry generates tens of billions of dollars a year, most of it selling the exact flat, soft, standardized design we just described, the one that never existed anywhere in human history before the last century or two. This does not mean modern mattresses are useless or a scam. Many people sleep genuinely well on them, but an entire industry has a financial interest in one specific belief, that flat and soft is simply what good sleep looks like, that any discomfort you feel is a personal problem, solved only by buying a slightly more expensive version of the same basic design. Rarely does the marketing mention incline. Rarely does it mention movement, or segmented sleep, or sleeping near another person, because none of that sells a single flat rectangle of foam. Signals that your sleeping environment is quietly different from what your body expects. There is one more piece worth understanding, and it might be the strangest one. The strangest piece is isolation. For nearly all of human history, sleep was not a solitary act. People slept in groups, families, extended kin, sometimes entire small communities, clustered together in a shared shelter. This was not simply cultural preference, it served a real protective function. A sleeping human is a vulnerable human, unaware of surroundings, unable to react quickly to danger. Sleeping in a group meant someone nearby was likely partially alert, whether from the segmented wake periods we already covered, or simply from staggered sleep timing across individuals. Group sleep functioned as a built-in, rotating watch system. Modern solitary sleep, alone behind a locked door, is historically unusual. This does not mean solitary sleep is unsafe today. Your bedroom door is not the savannah. But some researchers believe something lingers, a subtle background alertness that makes deep sleep harder to reach when alone, a faint echo of that older pattern. It may explain why sleep quality improves for some people beside a partner, and why new parents feel on edge, even in a perfectly quiet room. The nervous system may still be running old software, quietly checking for a second set of ears that used to always be there. There is also the matter of temperature, which ties into all of this. Ancestral sleep was rarely climate controlled to a single fixed number. Fires burned low through the night. Air moved through open shelters. Temperature naturally dropped as the night went on, then rose again near dawn. Your core body temperature actually follows this same pattern on its own. It drops in the evening to help trigger sleep onset. It rises again in the early morning to help trigger waking. Modern climate-controlled bedrooms often fight this natural drop. Central heating keeps a room at a constant temperature all night, which can work against your body's own internal signal to cool down and sleep. This is part of why many sleep experts recommend a slightly cooler bedroom. Not because cold rooms are inherently better, but because a cooler room lets your body do what it is already trying to do. Drop in temperature, on its own, the way it evolved to. Light follows a similar story. For nearly all of human history, darkness was actually dark. Firelight is dim, orange, and low to the ground. It barely disrupts the body's internal clock. Modern light, especially blue-toned light from screens, is a completely different signal. Your eyes evolved to treat bright, blue-toned light as a signal for daytime, not as background noise to ignore before bed. So a phone screen an hour before sleep is not neutral. It is telling your ancient internal clock that the sun is still up. None of this is new information exactly, but it connects directly to everything else we have covered. A body evolved for elevation, movement, incline, group presence, and dropping temperature. Placed instead on a flat, still, isolated, temperature-locked, light-saturated surface, every single night. It is worth noting where this shows up most clearly today. Watch how a young child actually falls asleep, if given the choice. Very few children choose to lie perfectly flat and still in total silence. They want to be held, or curled against someone. They want gentle motion, rocking, a heartbeat nearby. They resist being placed alone in a sealed, silent, flat space. We often treat this as a phase children need to outgrow, something to train out of them through sheer repetition. But it may be closer to the opposite. Children may simply be less conditioned to override 200,000 years of instinct. Adults have not lost that instinct. We have just learned to ignore it more successfully. So what does all of this mean for you tonight? Not that you need to abandon your bed for a woven mat in a tree. That would trade one set of problems for another. But there are small, genuinely useful adjustments worth trying. Before the list, one clarifying note. None of these tips require perfection. Small, consistent changes beat any single dramatic fix. Your body responds to patterns repeated over weeks, not one perfect night. Now, here's what to actually try. First, consider a slight incline. You do not need an expensive adjustable frame. A simple wedge pillow can lift your upper body a few degrees, or just an extra pillow under the head of your mattress. This alone can reduce morning congestion and mild snoring for many people. A rise of just 10 to 15 degrees is usually enough. You are not trying to sleep sitting up, just enough tilt that your head sits meaningfully above your hips. Second, stop treating movement during sleep as a failure. If you wake briefly at 2 in the morning and shift, that is not insomnia. That may be your body doing exactly what it evolved to do. The panic around brief waking often causes more disruption than the waking itself. Third, pay attention to your mattress firmness relative to your spine. A surface too soft lets your hips sink out of alignment. A surface too firm removes support at your neck and lower back. Neither extreme matches what your spine's curves actually need. Fourth, let your bedroom get slightly cooler than you think it should. Somewhere around 18 degrees Celsius works well for most people. Your body will thank you by dropping its own temperature faster. Fifth, dim the lights an hour before bed if you can manage it. Not perfect darkness, just less blue, less brightness, less daytime signal. Warm lamps instead of overhead lights. A phone brightness turned down, or a phone left in another room. This alone can shift how quickly your body settles into sleep. Sixth, if you sleep alone and notice worse sleep than with a partner nearby, know that this has a plausible biological basis. It is not necessarily anxiety or a character flaw. It may simply be an old alertness system doing its job, in an environment it was never designed for. One last thing worth mentioning before we wrap this up. None of this is really about sleep alone. It is about a much bigger pattern showing up in a bedroom. Your ancestors spent their entire lives inside feedback loops with their environment. Uneven ground, shifting temperature, other bodies nearby, natural light, and real darkness. Every one of those inputs shaped how the body was built to function. Modern life has smoothed almost all of that away. Flat floors, flat mattresses, constant temperature, constant light, constant isolation. Comfort, in the modern sense, often means removing friction entirely. But your body did not evolve in the absence of friction. It evolved by constantly, quietly adapting to it. Small amounts of natural friction are not the enemy of good rest. They may actually be part of what good rest requires. This is not an argument for discomfort as some kind of virtue. It is simply a reminder that too much smoothness can be its own quiet cost. None of this requires reinventing your entire life around ancestral sleep. Small adjustments, based on real physiology, matter more than dramatic overhauls. Overhauls nobody actually sticks with. Tonight, when you lie down, you might notice some of this for the first time. The flatness, the stillness, the pressure at your lower back where the gap used to be. You are not broken for noticing. You are simply the first generation asked to sleep this exact way, every single night, without exception. Your body has not caught up to the mattress advertisement. It is still running on older expectations, built across a much longer stretch of time than any furniture company has existed. Tonight, you cannot rebuild 200,000 years of sleep architecture, but you can tilt the pillow. You can stop panicking at 2 in the morning when you naturally stir. You can notice the gap at your lower back and adjust for it. Small corrections aimed at a body that has been asking for them the entire time, quietly, every single night, whether you were listening or not.